Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're cracked up to be? Here at Terrible Book Club, we explore whether you really can judge a book by its cover, or its ridiculous synopsis. You ever passed a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are.
Hello and welcome to episode 210 of the Terrible Book Club. I'm Paris and this is Chris.
Hello.
I'd like to dedicate today's episode to the Gentle Giant song, Lost My Head, because it so perfectly encapsulates what the experience of the show is like. And if you do not know this song, I'm just going to read some lyrical snippets so you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, we're starting out heady today.
I lost my head. It was not easy. Unknown, unread, it wasn't easy. And each day, each night, wasn't wrong nor right. I can't remember what I said. I lost my head. Are we feeling the terrible vibes? I am.
Oh, yeah, that actually is really spot on, man. What a well-selected quote.
Here it goes. What will I feel maybe tomorrow? But time not real, hours I can borrow. So until for now, as long as how, I can't remember what I said. I lost my head.
Relatable.
I lost my head. Forget what I said. What's the use to try to deny it? I didn't think it would ever happen again. Wondering why, once bitten, twice shy. Never thought again, would I try it? And even though, maybe soon, it would end. Wanting to stop, but had to go on. Give a little part of my person, and don't reflect, don't remember what I said. I was afraid, and I stayed away, making sure of my independence. Isn't it true that I lost my head?
Okay, fuck the TBC theme song that I wrote. This is just a better way to do it. This should be
especially
the actual...
Oh, I wish we could afford that. Especially if, like, you go to just about 3 minutes into the song. That's when, like, it really starts to fuck. It's great. Anyway.
Oh, we've just been foreplaying until now?
Well, no, I read lyrics from both before and after that point. But anyway, that song's great. You should watch the live performance of it. It is a feast for the eyes. Just the weirdest musicians from the 70s assembling and playing all different instruments and rotating in a glorious cacophony of 70s prog. It's beautiful. Anyway, that's how I was feeling at the start of this season.
Okay. Great way to set the mood. Thank you for doing so.
Yeah. Today, I read Elsie's Girlhood, Elsie Dinsmore number 3 by Martha Finley, originally published in 1872. Today's selection comes to us from listener Deborah, self-proclaimed unrepentant sinner. She wrote into us... Yeah, it was pretty good. She wrote a pretty good email. She wrote into us last summer, and we had never heard of this series before, so we were excited to add it to the schedule for this year because it was a different, terrible flavor for us. Victorian Christian child literature.
Oh, yeah. That's... I would not approach the bookstore shelf that had that category heading. I would walk right by it.
Yeah. Or I guess, well, is it the Victorian period? The Civil War period in America, but like ultimately kind of, those vibes. Deborah said, would you consider an episode on a book popular in another era, but one that is actually currently being sold to indoctrinate the homeschool religious zealots?
Right.
Elsie Dinsmore was popular after the Civil War. I first read a copy that was my mother's or grandmother's. Elsie is the smarmy goody-goody who is despised by her daddy and the aunt, uncle, and cousin she lives with for being such a devout Christian. Her only ally is the black servant, possibly enslaved person, I cannot remember when this novel is set, who encourages Elsie to accept her position with fortitude. Elsie manages to convert her darling daddy and eventually marries her daddy's best friend. There are all sorts of things to discuss. I have abhorred this book since I first read it, but I so enjoy tearing it apart. The fact that people still buy it is so disturbing. Please consider it. I think it would be such a fun episode. So, thanks, Deborah. We did consider it. We're here. I know she was mostly referring to the first book in the series, and honestly, all the criticism on the internet I could find focuses solely on the first and second book. And so I went for the third one because I was interested to see what else was going on. The first book in particular, people seem to be pretty up in arms about because her dad is such an asshole to her throughout the whole thing, and the family that, like, her distant relatives who took her in before that were also kind of shitty to her. So I think that one might have some of the worst content, like ethical and, like, familial abuse content. The second one, they're like on vacation the whole, I don't know, dude, they're fucking always on vacation. Doesn't matter what book it is, but
Life
the
of
second
leisure
one
for those plantation owning Christians.
Yep, but the second one really focuses on them at Roselands, which is some holiday, I don't know, one of the many estates, I can't remember them all. This third one is called Elsie's Girlhood, which is followed by Elsie's Womanhood. So this is really where we're seeing Elsie grow into mature into a pre-adult, pseudo-adult. The book starts when she's 10 and ends when she's 18, to give you some perspective.
Okay. I think we're going to have some really great handlings of certain topics, being a Christian-based book series about women.
Yep. It's going to be good today. All right. So speaking of which, in addition to our usual barnyard language, today's episode includes, grooming disguised as just a little old age gap. Just a little age gap. We've got some ableism, slavery, racism, and some heavy, like, late 19th century flavored Christianity. Lead.
What a delicious stew that I can't wait to forget is in the back of the fridge and just, like, wait for the moment I have to throw it out.
All right. If this is the first time you are listening to this show, what we do here at the Terrible Book Club is we read books that we assume will be bad based on their cover, title, summary, or some combination of the three. Sometimes we read books that our patrons, listeners, or friends recommend, like today. Deborah wrote into us and we chose her book. So we do the opposite of what most people do when they are in a bookstore or while they're browsing the internet. Typically, this experiment results in a disappointing and hilarious read, but once in a while, we do end up liking the book. Right. All right, Chris, I guess I'm going to read you the back of the book summary, do our characters and setting, and then read you my summary, because as a reminder, listeners, we're doing a different setup this season, where one of us is reading the book, and the other one is simply reacting to their experience. So I'm going to have some trivia dispersed throughout the summary, so we're going to stop here and there to have Chris answer some multiple choice trivia questions, and then Chris can also stop me at any point to ask questions, or have any interjections he desires.
Conniptions, I'm sure.
Yes. All right. So here's the back of the book summary, sort of your word I'm looking for. I don't know.
Bait? I don't know.
Anyway, no, I can't remember what I'm trying to say. All right. Enter the world of Elsie Dinsmore. These 19th century fictional chronicles of a beautiful young heiress in the Civil War South have captivated generations of 10 to 14-year-old readers eager to follow Elsie's life from childhood to motherhood and beyond. Covers feature custom illustrations.
It's like a Buzz Lightyear thing, like to motherhood and beyond. The new reaches of femininity that's beyond motherhood, like just being a person that's alive and doesn't have to be a mother, maybe.
Covers feature custom illustrations. I don't know why that sentence.
Wait, aren't all covers? Was everything a stock image somehow and I didn't realize?
It is now. All right. In Elsie's Girlhood, Book 3, Elsie's father remarries, giving her a mother she adores and a brother and sister. But not everybody has the young woman's best interests in mind. Right.
But did that other family just like fuck off, I guess?
What other family?
Because she said she's got a new brother and sister there, and she had like a brother and sister and like from the previous mother or aunt and uncle, maybe.
No. She didn't have another.
You mentioned
brother.
A bunch of family members that fucking hated her at the top of that. So
it was her.
Everyone in the house is like, oh, fucking Elsie is going off again about her girlhood. God.
Yeah. Okay. So just briefly, this is not in the story. Well, it's mentioned in the story, so it might be worth saying. Her dad, Horace Dinsmore, the elder, he had a fling with a girl when he was 17 and she was 15, which produced Elsie. But they were like separated, and then Elsie's mom like died pretty immediately. Okay. So the dad was off doing, I don't know, business stuff, and I think he didn't know the wife had died. So Elsie was like living with her aunt and uncle and like her cousins who were shitty to her. And her dad just like refused to come take care of her or get her for years. Because he was just like, fuck this, I hate this. Like, I'm sad that my girlfriend died and this sucks. I don't want to fucking have a kid, basically. And
damn.
So,
shit, I guess I can see why she got all pious and shit. She's like, God will accept me.
So when she's, I forget if she's 4 or 8. Anyway, when she's young, her dad finally comes to collect her. And she's like stoked. She's like, oh my God, my real dad, this is gonna rule. We're gonna have the best time. But no, he's like, ew, you're Christian? That's gross. Which is a weird point of view at this period of time,
like
anyway.
Civil War ass the South, like
who knows? So he's like,
I'm a
you're
sinning
Christian
man to the bone, Elsie. Old Papa's got sins to do.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. I mean, I didn't read that first one, but I guess he like punishes her really severely whenever she does anything that he doesn't like, and you know, she's like, well, I don't want to play piano on the Sabbath. And he's like, you better fucking play piano. I don't care about the Sabbath. It's like some shit like that. It's really stupid.
Listen, we're hearing some ragtime tonight. Ragtime was absolutely not at the same time as the Civil War.
That's wrong time. But anyway, by the end of book 1, apparently, they actually develop a really good relationship and like things turn around. He's like, fine, it's cool if you're Christian, I don't really care. And she's like, yay, daddy. And he's like, yay, Elsie, we're dad and daughter and we're the coolest. I don't know. So that's
Have you ever tried a cigarette, Elsie?
All right, so our characters and settings. So our characters are, of course, Elsie Dinsmore. Again, like when the book starts, she's about 10 or 11, and when it ends, she's 18. So she's like 10 or 11 for a few chapters, then she's 12, then all of a sudden she's 15 in chapter 5, and then suddenly 18 in chapter 10 or 11, where she remains for the rest of the book. It's a real jarring, like, shift. There's no
Nothing
warning.
notable happened in all of this
Yeah,
stuff.
this is my criticism of the book. Okay. Her father, Horace Dinsmore the Elder, he's a wealthy slave owner with a lot of plantations, which we just never really talk about. We never directly say in the book, like, he fucking owns slaves. They call all the slaves servants, but, like, pretty fucking clear that he's a slave owner with multiple, because they say plantation, and, like, I can't imagine what other type of plantation they could be having right now at this point in time. In that location.
All evidence points to slaves.
Yeah. So
find out that this is like the owner of the Dinty Moore Corporation or something, and every fucking can of pork and beans in the world is just somehow connected to this.
Probably. So anyway, he's like, at the beginning of the book, he's like 27, and by the end, he's like 35-ish, maybe a little older. So, because again, he had Elsie when he was like 7. He was like 17. So, pretty young. Rose Allison, who is Horace's new wife / Elsie's stepmom, she's like 21 through 29 for the span of the book. Arthur Dinsmore, who is Elsie's uncle, Horace's younger brother, who is a gambling addict and an asshole. He's like 17 to 25 throughout the course of the book. Then we have Tom Jackson, who's Arthur's fuckboy conman friend who has him deep in the debt hole. We've got Miss Chloe, aka Mammy, Elsie's enslaved nursemaid who raised her from birth. A bunch of other people and kids who honestly are just set dressing. Doesn't fucking matter. Whatever. I'm going to mention some people. You don't have to remember who they are.
Okay.
And then in terms of location, for most of the story, we're in and around Lansdale, Ohio, at Aunt Wealthy's house. Literally her name.
Okay.
Aunt Wealthy's house. As her first name is her real first name. And then we've got some guest appearances by, like, Philadelphia and, like, several other southern plantations and summer homes. Honestly, there's so many of both of these that I can't fucking keep them straight. These rich people have so many houses to live in. It blew my mind.
Same old story, song and dance out there, ain't it, Paris?
Oh, man, it is rough. All right, so it's kind of what we're working with. Again, we're in the South during the Civil War. We sort of go to the North sometimes. That's where we are. Okay. Here's my summary. I'm going to read this to Chris. Again, Chris, you may interject at any point with questions, commentary, exclamations. And then I'm going to pause occasionally for trivia questions for you.
Okay, awesome.
We open with Daddy Slavebucks finding a new wife. He chooses the 21-year-old Rose Allison, but consults with 11-year-old Elsie first, which is
already kind of sounds like an Instagram thirst trap model's name there.
Yeah.
Daddy's slave bucks went on and like got this new Instagram hottie that he found.
I mean, yeah, it's not off. Not off from the truth here. Okay. But he consults with 11-year-old Elsie first, which is actually a cool dad thing to do. Luckily, she also thinks Allison will be a swell new mommy, so they marry. For some reason, Elsie has no idea her stepmom is pregnant, and we just get a handful of short paragraphs explaining, there's a baby brother now, a year went by, and whoops, another 3 years have flown by, and Elsie's 15. Real jarring transition for the first couple of chapters.
It's like, okay, new mommy, new brother, all right, this is cool, let's skip ahead.
All right, amidst the general glossing over of slavery, this family lives on several plantations with presumably many slaves, so they call them servants. We just sort of follow Elsie's day-to-day, punctuated by bigger moments, most of which involve someone trying to marry her, especially in the latter half of the book when she's 18.
It's like from the street corner or something, just like, hey, toots, you want a husband? Is a lot of that, or like...
Well, she is the heiress to a slave owner's fortune.
That's true. Okay, so I was about to be like, what is Elsie offering? And it's heiress to the slave.
Has nothing to do with her. Spoiler.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No. What's her personality like? Like she
doesn't matter.
Interesting
Turns
hobbies. Out. Yeah. Okay. Great.
No one gives a fuck. All right. In about 300 quick pages, we get. I'm just highlighting some like big events. We get. Her Uncle Arthur shaking her down for her allowance at 11, and then running a catfishing scam on her 7 years later to get her to marry his 22-year-old con artist friend Tom Jackson to absolve his gambling debts. A hint of foreshadowing grooming from her dad's 20-something-year-old friend, Mr. Travilla, as a treat. He says, I wish you were 10 years older, Elsie, or I 10 years younger. An over-eager proposal from... her friend Herbert, who was turned down due to disability and promptly fucking dies. That'll teach you to say no to a man or be anything other than abled, young reader. A week vacation at her friend Lucy's plantation, a later vacation at her great-aunt Wealthy's house, yes, that's her actual name, and evangelizing when the opportunity presents itself.
So, like, when Tom Jackson reveals the fucking, like, catfishing plot, she's like, no, I won't marry you, but have you heard... about our Lord and Savior, and she's like re-chainmailing him back or whatever. Like,
I wish that's what had happened. That actually would have been great.
Like two chain letters, one's about Jesus and one's about like a business opportunity, talking to each other, trying to convince each other.
That actually would have made this book better. That really would have been great. I would have really wanted that Elsie heel turn for sure. All right, Chris, so we got a lot of vacations going on in this book. I learned in this book that just rich people are just on vacation all the time. Their kids, them, just constant, just like, I don't know, I need the air. I'm going to go to the country for 3 months. All right, fine. Like, nothing matters. You just fuck off forever. All right, so what on this list would be something you absolutely would not fucking take on a vacation to your aunt's house? A.
Aunt Wealthy.
Yes, sorry. 1, a whole-ass piano. 2, your pony. 3, other human beings. What would you not take with you?
Well, let's be generous and say when you say other human beings, it's friends and not slaves. And, like, I would like friends with me on vacation, so I would probably take some friends with me to my Aunt Wealthy, especially if it's, like, a nice-ass house with, like, a pool and hopefully not slaves. Like, I would maybe take some other humans to that.
Oh, wow, I know you mean
slaves, but I'm trying to... Let's just say that I'm also glossing over that. Okay, but between a whole-ass piano and a pony, I would personally want to take the piano, but I know that it's just, from our friends in the Antiques Freaks, that's an impossible. You just go, if you got Aunt Wealthy, she probably has a piano, or you can just get her to buy you a piano for over there. And the pony will take you to Aunt Wealthy's house. So I figure, like, that's not bad. Then you can go riding around the estate. So I would absolutely fucking not take the piano.
Okay. Well, that, Chris, you provided a really great explanation, but Elsie takes all of these things with her on vacation to her aunt's house. She takes a whole-ass piano, her pony, her slaves, her friends even. We just take the whole
both
kit
categories of other humans.
Yeah, just Well, I think, technically, she has some friends that live nearby, so she doesn't really take them with her. But
I see.
All right, great. So that was a kind of a trick question because none of them would be abandoned. But you know,
does the pony carry the piano? It's probably it's the slaves.
Dude,
that carry
no,
the piano,
they
right?
shipped the piano. They shipped the piano,
okay.
So she would have it. Yeah,
it's you could probably just ask on if you're paying for piano shipping, you can buy the other piano.
Right. Yeah, it seems anyway. All right, thank you, Chris. Now we're going to return to the summary for another paragraph and a half. Throughout the story, we learn Elsie is weirdly adult and overly serious for a kid. She loves all the strict rules from Daddy Slave Bucks and Sky Daddy. She doesn't eat in the evening and goes to bed by 9 or 10 p.m., lest she not get enough health and beauty sleep. She's, of course, beautiful, blonde, clever, studious, and talented at piano and sewing, plus she's due to inherit a slave owner's fortune. She's unfortunately boring and predictable as a result, though. She's just really into being a Christian and a sub to her dad at, purity ball levels.
Oh.
Yeah. Look, man, it's fine if you're religious, and it's nice when people have positive relationships with their parents. However, I'm gonna be skeptical when you're letting the King James rule your life as a literal child, and when you wait for your dad's daily letters like a forlorn lover and think no man could ever be cooler than your dad, so you probably won't get married. This is a real thing other people remark upon in the text where they're like, wow, Elsie must be expecting a letter from a lover. And they're like, no, it's her dad. And people are like, that's kind of weird.
So even the author in here is like,
yeah, but no,
necessarily.
But you see, that gives Elsie the opportunity to be like, no, it is great because Daddy's so awesome and I'm such a good daughter.
All right. Cool. I can't ever imagine wanting to wait for a letter from my dad. I'm just going to say,
yeah, it's wild.
Barely respond to the text.
Anyway, the catfish plot begins and thickens rather quickly. Tom Jackson fakes a letter from a family friend of Aunt Wealthy's with Arthur's help to gain access to the estate in Lansdale, Ohio, where Elsie is on her long summer vacation, where he will strike. All right, Chris, trivia 2. If you were trying to catfish a young gullible heiress, which would be your fake moniker? Bromley Edgerton, Edgar Cummingsley, Braun Edging.
Paris, come on. None of those are real names. What do you have, Dr. Goon Cave is also, writing letters over there or something?
I mean,
who is it? Okay. Ron Cummingsley or, Ron Edging?
No. Okay. Bromley Edgerton.
Edgerton.
Yep. Edgar Cummingsley. Braun Edging.
Ron Edging.
Braun. B-R-A-W-N. Braun Edging.
Braun Edging is also a fucking Instagram model, but it's a dude who's really, really built.
Yes.
Okay.
I doesn't want to
sweep all these away. If I'm trying to go for Elsie's hand, option D, Jesus Christ the Lord, is who I would send a letter from.
Okay, well, no, but he has to. He's appearing to her in person, introducing himself. So he can't be hello, I am Jesus. I don't think she would go for that.
Okay, all right. I get. She seems kind of dopey, so I guess Braun Edging would kind of hook her. That's my answer.
All right. Chris, that was incorrect, but I feel like you had no hope. I did a really good job with these names.
All three of those were the same fucking thing, man.
So the fake name he actually chooses is Bromley Edgerton, which just sounds like the most fake-ass name. These all sound fake, but I could not believe that was the name. I was like, really? Bromley? Who the fuck is named Bromley? Was that a popular name in the 1870s?
Hello, I'm Egbert Longcock. Please, let me into your estate.
All right, so Tom Jackson goes by the alias Bromley Edgerton and courts Elsie for weeks. He eventually begins to reel in his catch by letting her think that she converted him to Christianity. Coincidentally, Mr. Travilla, Elsie's dad's friend, the one who told her at 10 that he wishes she was 10 years older, has another good friend whose son is also a gambling addict. This leads to them stumbling into the same gambling parlor as Bromley, who Travilla then conveniently runs into a second time while visiting Elsie at Aunt Wealthy's estate a week later. He immediately calls him out, but Bromley explains to Elsie that, why, he has a cousin with the same name as him who looks dreadfully similar and has a gambling and drinking habit, so it's no wonder Travilla made such an accusation. Elsie is extremely gullible and believes this.
Come on, Elsie.
Nope, no critical thinking.
Oh, man. Elsie.
Yeah, he proposes right then and there, and she agrees to write to her father for his consent to marry. Mind you, she has never had a boyfriend or even a fucking crush at this point, despite being 18, so this is all pretty wild.
It's hard to root for Elsie, I gotta be honest with you.
Yep, it is. It's pretty hard. Elsie tells Travilla, and he waves red handkerchiefs at her, Cammy Crawford catfish style, but she doesn't believe Bromley could be anyone but the pious charmer she has fallen for. Travilla endeavors to stay and keep an eye on the bullshit. Meanwhile, Cousin Arthur, the orchestrator of the catfish scheme, comes down with a feverish illness, and in his fever, says enough troubling keywords and phrases to make his brother Walter concerned that something nefarious is afoot. Said suspicions are confirmed seconds later when Walter starts cleaning up their house before a nurse arrives and moves Arthur's coat, out from which floats a letter. The last correspondence he had gotten from Bromley, signed TJ, aka BE, because signing documents where you admit to crimes with your real initials equating to your fake alias is totally something a hardened criminal would do.
Really boneheaded move all around over here to be like, I'll just make it initials and then they won't be able to figure that shit out. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
And the whole letter was like about the scam. Like, it wasn't about anything else, so it just makes it's even worse.
Why would you keep that in the pocket? Like, just get rid of it.
I don't know.
Was it like outlining the scheme step by step and he had to like keep it on hands? Like, what am I supposed to do next? Oh, okay. I have to keep pretending to be Christian. Okay, I'm going to keep this for later.
Yeah, it was real stupid. Well, it's because like Bromley had written to Arthur to be like, I think it's going well. Like, I'm really getting her. Like, she's really falling for me. And, like, I'm going to have that money yet. And
what
it's like, great.
A stupid bitch.
Basically. All right. So, anyway, Walter finds this letter and is like, shit. He writes to Elsie's dad to stop the scam. Somehow, all 4 of these letters arrive on the same day to Elsie's dad and in plot order. The letter from Elsie asking for consent to marry Bromley's letter to her dad being like, no, I'm totally not a gambler, you should let me marry Elsie. Travilla's letter saying, yo, that dude's a fucking gambler and he's a miscreant, don't let her marry him. And then finally Walter's, who's like, hey, I found this letter with this whole scam outline, don't let her marry that guy.
Very convenient phrase.
Yes.
That's the post office used to do that for you, actually, way back
yeah,
then.
keep everything in chronological order.
It was funded well, and like it would keep it relevant to your particular life plot order.
Right. So Dad hops on the next train to Elsie Land, obviously, because he's pissed. He and Travilla arrive and swiftly tell Bromley that they know his game and he's got to get fucked and get out of there. In fact, Daddy Slavebucks is so pissed that this miscreant tried to court his daughter that he even denies him the ability to look at her by making her wear a full veil for the last 4 days they're at Lansdale.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
You're punishing Elsie for this one.
Yeah, fucking wild. Okay. This question is I should have asked this earlier, but so when she was 11, Arthur had tried to shake her down for her allowance.
I remember that.
So, how much does Elsie get for an allowance each month at the age of 11, adjusted for inflation in 2024 US dollars?
Oh, okay, so I'm giving you the 2024 amount, not
right.
This is like, I don't know, a nickel back then, and she could like buy out the whole candy store.
Right. So, okay, option 1 is $200. So this is for a month. So $200 a month. Yep. $0, are you stupid, she's female, why would anyone give her money of her own, the 1870s? Option 3, $1,200.
Okay, well, I'm gonna scratch B out simply because you talked about the uncle shaking her down for her allowance money, so unless it's like another sort of comedy of errors where the uncle's like, give me your fucking money, and she's like, here you go, and hands him like an empty purse or whatever, and he's like, all right, you're a woman. Oh, shit, I'm sorry, I forgot. And the other options are $200 a month and $1,200 a month. Both are ridiculous, but let's just go with $1,200 fucking dollars a month for Elsie, who has no hobbies to speak of. So I guess to just donate to Jesus or the church all the time? I'm gonna go with that. $1,200.
You are correct. When she was 11, she was getting $1,200 a month as an allowance. Imagine getting $1,200 a month as an allowance.
As an 11-year-old.
Yes.
Fucking
so presumably it probably got...
Crush bill is going to be high. The Fortnite and Roblox purchases are off the chain.
Yeah. Not to okay, and then also consider that, like, she's the daughter of a wealthy plantation slave owner. So, like, all of her needs are met. She doesn't need to use this money to buy food or clothes or anything. Just $1,200 a month. I want $1,200 a month for free. All right, good job, Chris. You got that one right. All right. They head to yet another summer vacation of some kind where Daddy Slavebucks confronts Arthur about his involvement in the catfish scam. Arthur claims
he took him on vacation after that? He was like they're all on the way over?
They like went on vacation, but they like stopped by to, I forget. I think they just like stopped by to see
finger
him.
wag.
To confront him. Yeah, I think so. So Arthur claims he wrote the letters and tries to pretend he doesn't know about anything because Jackson threatened him in a letter just that morning. So he's like, bitch, you better keep your mouth shut. They're coming after me. So anyway, the rich people unload all of the extravagant shit they bought over these months of vacations and shopping, and Elsie is big sad that her first crush was a criminal catfish. She has a bunch of visitors over to the summer house to brighten her spirits, and she goes, to her regular house, and then they go back to the summer house she went to at the beginning of the book with her friend Lucy, who is Herbert's brother. Bromley tracks her down to this house and conspires with Lucy to set up a meet with her. He kisses Elsie and tries to convince her that he's totally not an asshole. She protests that she's going against her father's wishes, but he, like, holds her down on the couch and, like, talks at her, and eventually she gets away and runs out just as Lucy enters. Bromley then asks Lucy to help him kidnap Elsie, which Lucy staunchly refuses. She's like, dude, I set up the meet. We are not kidnapping my friend. That is where I draw the line. Elsie is ashamed. Line to draw,
actually.
Yeah. Elsie is ashamed and terrified of her dad, and sure enough, he victim blames her, saying she easily could have gotten away and screamed. So, of course, this meeting she did not plan or intend to have is her fault, actually. He banishes her to isolation in her room until her stepmother comes home and talks Daddy Slavebucks down from the patriarch tree. He releases her from isolation, but bans her from ever seeing Lucy again. One strike and you're fucking out of our lives forever.
Damn, like, Elsie sounds like she had, like, the one friend and they kind of, like, maybe did nothing together. That's gonna be rough for her, and it's only God now.
Yep. Elsie becomes visibly depressed, and her parents wonder why, seeming to have no self-awareness. Instead of
just locked her in the room and took away her one friend. Why is she sad? I don't understand.
Fucking kids these days.
Give her more allowance. That way, even though she can't leave the room to use the allowance, give her more allowance.
Instead of considering how they've treated her, they resolve to solve this the only way modern 1870s parents know how. So, Chris, my question for you is, how do they treat Elsie's depression? Number one, do they assume she has a physical illness and send her to a fancy hospital where she can get clean air? Number two, send her on an all-expenses-paid shopping trip to Philadelphia, followed by a year in Europe. Number three, sending her to a convent.
It's the convent. I know in, like, this book it's probably the convent, but, like, I mean, they've already got her living the convent life at this point, right? She's in a veil in her room. She's, like, supposedly part of, like, a huge, like, wealthy sort of, like, thing that she can not actually take part in, which is, like,
I didn't make this connection. This is insane. Keep going.
But, like, you know, like, the church has a bunch of wealth, but it's, like, not like the nuns are really using it that hard or whatever. So she's already in convent mode. It would be the most seamless transition. And they all seem kind of dour in those convents anyway. So if she sat over there, at least it's not here in the house.
All right. Alas, that is incorrect, although I understand why you chose it. It's a good option. they choose to give her an all-expenses-paid shopping trip to Philadelphia, followed by a year vacation in Europe with the rest of them. With the whole
Okay,
thing.
it seems to be going against the whole locker in a room thing from before, so kind of mixed messages happening here. They're like, all right, just go spend your allowance and slut it up in Europe or whatever else. I don't know, like go hit some raves.
No. It's with her mom and dad.
Oh, I thought they were like sending her off on her own so that she unchaperoned.
Are you kidding?
In Paris.
No way. They would never send her unchaperoned anywhere.
I apologize.
No. All right. So they send her to shop in Philly and then go on to Europe for the year with them. In an absolutely absurd and unbelievable turn of events, somehow Bromley, Tom Jackson, the catfish guy, is also in Philly and happens to drunkenly amble by their carriage with a sex worker who calls him Tom while he is talking about how he tried to seduce Elsie for her money right as their carriage passes him on the road. Somehow all of that lines up.
And then I wrote this I had to keep the thing in my pocket to remember where I was, but then I wrote this letter about this stupid bit. And
Yep. So
by.
Elsie is just like, I can't believe I was so wrong. Meh, meh, meh. So after this plot crime, the author Martha Finley becomes incensed with authorial vice and commits further literary sins. First, all of the quote-unquote bad people, whether it's like Arthur or Tom or whatever, they all are like summarily punished by karma or God like a year later. So there's a sudden time skip again. So Elsie has an Aunt Anna, who was like going to marry a man that her parents didn't approve of. So she gets beaten, impoverished, and abandoned by her husband. Arthur gets run over by a fucking train, and Tom went to prison for manslaughter and forgery.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Arthur just was it a sudden train? Was he like a train guy?
He wasn't like a train guy. He just got hit by a fucking train. I don't know how you accidentally get hit by a train, but it happened. So
like the loud dingy bells weren't enough for him over that time. Okay, well, sure. The just desserts for the baddies.
Yep, everybody gets their comeuppance. Travilla is sent to track the Dinsmore family down in Europe because they've been gone so fucking long their housekeeper is concerned.
They're even like, we'll be back at some point. I don't know, man. We're in Europe. Who cares about what businesses we have to run? Like, let the slaves take care of it. We're gone, man. Just send the check to Europe.
Literally, that is what happens. Okay. Oh, so while they're in Europe, Mommy Slave Bucks gives birth to a daughter, Rosebud, while they're traveling. So cool, whatever. All right, so Chris, we're entering the last paragraph, or end of the book. How does this book end? Number 1, Elsie is forbidden to ever marry because she and her dad are just so fucking weird, and she's actually stoked about this. Number 2, Elsie becomes a nun. Number 3, Elsie gets engaged.
Since the next book is Elsie's womanhood, so would Elsie take this vow with her dad to never marry, but in the next book something happens and they both change their minds? Or is it more likely that she just gets engaged to, I don't know, Travilla by the end of he's like, you're old enough now, Elsie, or whatever. I'm going to go with the third. Someone pops up out of the street corner and is like, I'm not also a catfisher. I really have a fortune, you stupid bitch. And still looking doesn't finish the sentence so she gets engaged.
Yay, you're right. That is how it ends. She does get engaged. Good job, Chris. All right.
To who?
We're about to find out. All of the adults have a weird conversation about how Travilla doesn't look a day over 29, despite him being probably around 39 at this point. Hint, this is the he's hot so it's cool setup. He ushers them back to America a few months later so they can all attend a bunch of weddings that were lined up for the fall, during which he admits to a friend that he has been in love with someone for a long time. He hangs out with Elsie's aunt Adelaide a few times, and Elsie thinks they're dating. Soon after, it is reported that Adelaide is indeed engaged, and Elsie can't figure out why she's sad to hear the news and cries herself to sleep many nights over Travilla being engaged to Adelaide. Of course, Travilla comes to see her and in their conversation professes his love for Elsie, and it is discovered this was all a misunderstanding. Adelaide is engaged, but to Edward Allison, not Travilla. Oh, happy day. Travilla proposes to Elsie, and Daddy Slave Bucks walks in just in time to bless this engagement between Travilla, 20 years her senior, marrying Elsie, a girl he has known since she was in grade school. Dad seals the engagement by kissing Elsie full on the lips, which ends Elsie's girlhood.
All right. Great. That's just like walking out of there feeling slimy. Like,
yeah, yes.
Covered in patriarchal goop.
Yeah, you came out of that egg. It's pretty gross in there.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry you had to endure that, Paris.
Yeah, I have feelings. All right. So, any questions before I launch into the rubric?
No, you know what? I'm going to withhold that. I feel like that seems like what I'd expect out of a book written at this time. I guess it's interesting that a lot of the characters aren't Christian. So, like, do they just, like, not go to church? Or are they just sort of like, yeah, we'll make a passing glance at it to, like, seem like part of the community? Are they, like, actively satanic? Like, what degree of non-Christian are we talking?
Well, it's more that it's not that other people aren't Christian. It's more that Elsie's just too hardcore about it.
Oh, okay.
She straight up won't go to dance parties or dance because she thinks it's sinful. She won't, stay up late. She does her prayers morning and night. She won't eat certain things. She's just really, uber devout for no reason. And everyone's like, damn, that's kind of weird. And she's like, I love God, though. And they're like, whatever, I guess you do you. Yeah.
And Travilla is like, I love this woman. Is he also very pious?
I don't remember.
Listen, if he's not particularly pious enough to stick out about it, I don't know about that one, man.
I mean, it's really weird. Like, he's known her since she was, I don't know, 6 or something. And I don't understand how you can know someone from, kindergarten years and then 15 years later be like, I'm gonna marry her. Like, ugh. I don't know. I mean, they're not related, but, it's just creepy, especially because, 8 years earlier, he was like, oh, man, I wish you were 10 years older, when she was 10. So, which, clearly shows that there, this is, something he's been, waiting for. And, do you really think he would marry
Elsie
her if she wasn't...
Dinsmore countdown calendar or whatever, on the internet?
Oh, God. Oh, the worst advent calendar of all time. Yeah, and he waits till she's 18 to propose to her. I mean, and do you really think that he would marry her if she wasn't the daughter of his super wealthy... I mean, Travilla is wealthy as well, but, Dinsmore is, very... So, it's pretty clear to me that, he's just wow, she's really docile and kind of dumb, and she's worth billions, so cool, let's do this. And, my bro is my bro. I'm gonna marry his daughter. I don't know. I don't see how there's any
I don't see any good intent
between them.
Here.
Yeah, but it's painted that way. It's painted he is the knight in shining, slave mail or whatever.
All right, let's get into the rubric then.
Yeah. All right. Technical construction. There were 2 typos. This was very well edited. Even when these came out, they were professionally written and edited. The writer was a school teacher who became a writer. The formatting, I had two issues with formatting. One, Chris, guess what this book did that I hated? Guess what it did? What's a thing I hate all the time?
I don't know, chapter titles. It's got the horrible chapter titles.
Okay, close. What's the other thing I hate right at the beginning of chapters if it's not the title?
A little quotation at the start of every chapter?
Yes! It had quotes at the beginning of every chapter, and there were 20 chapters in It was just needless and annoying. I just don't, it didn't add anything. Why are we doing this?
I skip them.
Why are we doing this?
I don't fucking read them, man.
Yep, it's dumb. My bigger problem, that was just a small thing. My bigger problem is that there are just some sudden temporal shifts that you just pick up on as you're reading and you're like, wait, why is she 15? She was just 11. What the fuck? It's just really sudden.
They don't even do 4 years later or whatever. It's just
No, and I sometimes was wondering, well, why did we skip over all those years? Did just nothing happen the last
no proposals,
4
so really
years?
nothing noteworthy.
Yeah, right. And so it was just odd. And then there were some kind of menial things that were talked about, but were really boring. And it was just all about like, well, your dress needs more flounces, or like, oh, your hair is so nice. Oh, we should put your hair up. Oh, it's so blonde and perfect. And oh, okay. And then it's like, oh, and we went out on the ponies in the dawn, and it was lovely outside. I don't know. So maybe that's why she skipped so much content. Maybe it's years of that. I don't know.
She actually cut a lot of that out, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Can I say, I like a typo that survives multiple centuries of republishing.
Yeah.
So, like, those two typos that you mentioned, they're hanging on for like, they're old and wizened typos.
Yeah. Well, they also could be a product of it being digitized or through some, because I don't know how many times rights have changed hands. So it could actually not be
copy and
from
paste it
the
into some Google Doc and like it autocorrects something because you like pressed enter once.
Right. So anyway, I just felt like it was, I don't know, we're like skipping huge swaths of time. And I don't know why we had to go to that vacation to her friend's house for a week that took up multiple chapters. Why did we get no content during the first year of her having a whole new parent? Nothing. Why is there's like so much outfit and hair content? So I don't know, the inclusions and exclusions were a little confusing to me. And it doesn't need to be like perfectly apportioned, but I just wished it felt a little more planned. But I also don't like slice of life stuff like this, so this could just be a me problem. I guess I would have, at minimum, just appreciated, I don't know, a year at the top of the chapter instead of a quote. Like, tell me when this is
relevant information.
Would have been cool. Punctuation was fine. The cover art and direction really varies depending on what edition you're looking at, because there's like the more official ones by like real publishers, and those are basic but effective. They have a little illustration. The version we have is like a crime against vision. It's like this like terrible.
That was definitely like shat out, like all the Elsie Dinsmores at once is public domain. We made one fat ass Google Doc and we just like put the title in text on the cover or whatever.
Well, and it has like a pixelated version of like a painting of a girl, but it's like a copyrighted paint. It's like a painting you can't steal. So they pixelated it.
.png.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, if you get the more reputable versions, the covers are fine. It's usually just like a drawing of a bouquet or a little girl or something. They're fine. This one we have, though, please God, don't get the one that's like the compilation of all of them. It's terrible. All right, great. So technical, definitely a 1 by far. Totally fine with editing and all that stuff. All right, plot construction, the general coherence. Like, for me, this really lost a beautiful opportunity here, because we could have had a story about how Elsie's sense of love is evolving. Because when she started out very little, she got really attached to Christianity and like the love of Jesus and God and faith. And then after some trial and tribulation, she developed a really deep love for her father. This really like, platonic love of a family member, and then she got like a new mom who she really loved, and her new mom rules, and it's great. And she's kind of like, at the beginning, she's sort of wrestling with like the memory of her dead mom and like having a new stepmother. And that felt really relatable to me for kids. And then we could have watched her sort of start to develop crushes and like develop a sense of romantic love. But we don't get that at all. We don't get that at all. We have the first guy who's interested in her is like her friend from childhood, Herbert, who has some sort of disability. He has trouble walking and has some kind of fainting spells or something. And she is scared to tell a man no. So she says, maybe we can get married. And he, writes to her dad, gets turned down because he's disabled, because it's 1870s. And it literally kills him. So like, her first experience with someone is like pretty negative, because she didn't have a romantic love for him. She just felt bad for him and was afraid to say no to her. She didn't want to hurt him. And then a couple of years later, actually, was it a couple of years later? Maybe a year later? I forget. We have the whole catfishing scam with Bromley, and that's like a guy who's just lying to her. And so there's never really an opportunity for her to have any kind of real companionship that's outside of her family with like a guy. which kind of makes sense as to why she ends up with Travilla, because she's known him her whole life, and she feels safe with him because he's another adult. It's just too bad that she never applies any critical thinking to situations. Her only thoughts are, is this cool with God? Is this cool with Dad? That's the only way her mind works. There's no sense of like, do I want this? Is this good for me? How do I feel about this? None of that. I mean, even when she's like kind of caught up on Bromley, she's like, but Dad, he seems so cool. But she's like, no, but I won't marry without your consent. Like, obviously, like the way you feel is more important than how I feel, basically. So it's just sad. It's just really sad that we don't get any of this development.
And ostensibly, that's sort of like the point being pushed here in these books, you would guess, right? Is like, you should be thinking about God and Dad God all the time. There's always going to be some male figures above you who you should consider their feelings before your own.
Actually, it's very explicit. In the preface to Elsie's Girlhood, it says, "May my readers who have admired and loved her as a child find her still more charming in her fresh young girlhood. May she prove to all a pleasant companion and friend, and to those of them now treading the same portion of life's pathway, a useful example also, particularly in her filial love and obedience." It is explicit. It wants its readers to identify with and model the behaviors of the protagonist. Like, it is just, at least it's honest, I guess. At least Martin Finley was like, this is what I'm going for, this is what I'm doing.
Listen, I love God, I love Dad, you should too. Join the train.
Yep. So that's that. Yeah, so it's a bummer because you don't really get any depth with Elsie. The only time you get depth is about something else, which I'll talk about later when I talk about the writing. But it's just kind of like, I don't know, that could have been a great journey for her to go on, to really feel like, to finally feel like she was developing a different sense of love and also making, trying to make a decision for herself. But nope. So, bummer there. I guess it follows the rule of like Elsie only cares about what God thinks and what Dad thinks, and that's, I mean, it follows the rules it sets out, I guess. Yeah. Character quality is pretty shit, especially like the enslaved characters get no depth. They're just dependable, fawning, and servile, which is not great. It's all like, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's. That's how they are all portrayed.
Right.
Yep. The rest of the white cast has like a tiny bit of depth, but it's almost exclusively focused on Elsie and her dad. And everyone else is just kind of there as like a curtain. Like even her mom and siblings like have no personality. The mom only has personality in one scene where she's like, hey, Horace, don't lock your fucking daughter in her room. Like maybe let's not do that. It's like the only time you see her appear and have any like opinion.
Thank God, at least for that. You know what? I gotta say, let's give the novel credit that at least at one point there was like, we shouldn't hit the patriarchy this hard. You should let women out of their one room.
Yeah. And I can read a little bit of some of the dialogue involving the enslaved characters. It's rough, but I'll read a little bit of it. All right, so here's an example. This is a short one, but this is Chloe, her nursemaid. Massa wants you for to come right along to him in the study, darlin', just as soon as your old mammy can get you dressed, said Chloe one morning to her nursling. So it's just that the whole time, and
even that.
Yeah.
That's the sentence for that time period. Oh boy, yikes!
There's a worse. So I'm actually going to need you to bleep some things in this next one.
Oh, great! What if we just bleeped this whole section out and you don't actually have to read it?
Well, I'll just skip the words. I will not say them. Okay. Elsie was charmed with the idea, and it was immediately carried out, to the great astonishment of Chloe, Aunt Viney, and all her sable tribe. Show, Miss Lucy, what for you go for to fotch de company right year into dis year old dirty kitchen, cried Aunt Viney, dropping a hasty curtsy to Elsie, then hurrying hither and thither in the vain effort to set everything to rights in a moment of time. "Clar out of here, you Han and Skip," she cried, addressing two small urchins of dusky hue, and driving them before her as she spoke. "There ain't no room here for you, and kitchens ain't no place for," I'm gonna say that one, "of your size or sect. I'll fling the dishcloth at yo brack faces ef yo comes in again fo you sent for. I clear Miss Elsie and Miss
Paris,
Lucy
I
doze."
have to ask you to stop.
Yeah, yeah, it just goes on like this.
Man, that's some of the roughest dialogue I've heard of that type. Oh boy!
The N-word happens a couple times, but it's the black slaves saying it. Not that makes it
so
much
it's
better,
okay.
But yep.
Jesus,
yeah.
God in heaven, man, that's like really
So
hitting high on the I don't feel right even like putting my eyes on that scale.
And I just felt I needed to read some of it so you would know I wasn't so listeners would know I wasn't exaggerating.
Yes.
And honestly, I found it difficult to parse and understand because it's just so it's just so alien to how people talk now. And I always feel funny about this because when you have white people writing black characters, especially slaves, and especially at this point in history, like right after the Civil War, or during the Civil, I guess it was published in 1872, but I think I don't remember if it takes place during the Civil War. I don't remember. Anyway, I don't know. I just always feel like the whole writing out the speech phonetically and like the way white people imagine black slaves to have spoken, it just I'm like never sure to trust it. I don't want to trust it because I'm sure that this is exaggerated to the point of cartoonish levels. At the same time, I know that black English evolved differently than white English, right? So I'm sure there's some semblance of realism in there, but it just really feels like they took something real and really turned it up to like cartoon levels. So I don't know. It just always feels shitty. Of course, I'm no like black linguistic scholar. Like, what do I know? But there's just a sense that it's not right to me, like not completely accurate, and also painting these people as, again, just sort of like, oh, we're the fun help. Like, we're totally not either currently or recently enslaved, because I don't actually remember what year this takes place in. But yeah. So whoa. Yeah, it's a little tough to read. Of course, if that's, I guess what I'm saying is I am suspicious that this is not really exactly how people spoke, and so it makes me feel a little gross because I'm like, oh, this is just like a weird racist caricature, right? All right. In terms of writing, the prose quality, I actually felt was pretty good. Like, this felt professionally edited, like I said before. It was certainly a little overwrought sometimes when it didn't need to be, but it also managed to be concise and poignant at times when it was important. Specifically, there's a part right at the beginning when she's talking about missing her mom and getting a new stepmom, and I feel like that there's a couple passages that are pretty good, so I'm gonna read those.
All right.
Don't worry, none of the servants are about.
Okay, good?
She felt no disposition to renew the afternoon's conversation with Annie Hart, so she went quietly upstairs to their private parlor and sat down to amuse herself with a book until Chloe came in from eating her supper. Then the little girl brought a stool, and seating herself in the old posture with her head in her nurse's lap, she drew her mother's miniature from her bosom, and fixing her eyes lovingly upon it, said, as she had done hundreds of times before, "Now, Mammy, please tell me about my dear, dear Mama." The soft eyes were full of tears, for with all her joy at the thought of Rose, mingled a strange, sad feeling that she was getting farther away from that dear, precious, unknown mother, whose image had been, since her earliest recollection, enshrined in her very heart of hearts. So, I don't know, just a
that's
good
a
passage to demonstrate
poignant
that.
passage, like, a young girl's sense of loss over a parent.
Yeah. And then that comes up again shortly. Let me, this is her dad and her talking. "I am not angry, darling, only pained that my little girl is not so happy as I expected. I hoped that your joy would be unclouded tonight as mine has been. But will you not tell your father what troubles you, dearest?" "I was looking at this, Papa," she said, drawing her mother's miniature from her bosom and putting it into his hand. "And Mammy was telling me all about my own Mama again, and Papa, I love Miss Rose, and I'm very glad she's coming to us, but It seems as if... She burst into a flood of tears, and hiding her face on his breast, sobbed out, "Oh, Papa, I can't help feeling as though Mama, my own dear Mama, is farther away from us now, as if she's going to be forgotten." There were tears in his eyes, too, but gently raising her head, he pushed back the curls from her forehead, and kissing her tenderly, said, in low, soothing tones, "No, darling, it is only a feeling, and will soon pass away. Your own dear mother, my early love, can never be forgotten by either of us. Nor would Rose wish it. There is room in my heart for both of them. And I do not love the memory of Elsie, the elder," sorry, her mom's name was also Elsie, "less, because I have given a place in it to Rose." There was a momentary silence. Then she looked up, asking timidly, "You are not vexed with me, Papa?" "No, dearest, not at all. And I am very glad you have told me your feelings so freely," he said, folding her closer and closer to his heart. "I hope you will always come to me with your sorrows, and you need never fear that you will not find sympathy, and help too, as far as it is in my power to give it. Elsie, do you know that you are very like your mother? The resemblance grows stronger every day, and it would be quite impossible for me to forget her with this living image always before me." "Am I like her, Papa? I am so glad!" exclaimed the little girl eagerly, her face lighting up with a joyous smile. It seemed as though Mr. Dinsmore could hardly bear to part with this child that night. He held her a long time in his arms, but at last, with another tender caress and a fervent blessing, he bade her good night and sent her away. Pretty great moment,
that's sweet. That's a very sweet passage.
Well, and it's like written well, right? And you have this idea that, even if you lose a parent and you gain a step parent, like, it doesn't mean you erase one, right? You can still love the memory of someone and hold that love at the same time as you hold another. And I don't know, I was just surprised given the time this was written. I was like, this is relatively wholesome and good. Like, I was
it's like disregarding all the context around who her dad is and like what else is going on.
Don't think too hard about anything, but all right, and I'm gonna read another part just so you can get some of the good setting. This is a I'm gonna read this to you and then tell you what it made me think about. Okay, this was when she is hanging out with I don't remember the kid who proposed, Herbert. Okay, she's chilling with Herbert. Elsie's eyes followed with eager interest the swiftly moving forms. They're watching people dance, for context. But Herbert's were often turned admiringly upon her. At length, he asked if she did not find the room rather warm and close, and proposed that they should go out upon the veranda. She gave a willing assent, and they passed quietly out and sat down side by side on a rustic seat. The full moon shone upon them from a beautiful blue sky, while a refreshing breeze, fragrant with the odor of flowers and pines, gently fanned their cheeks and played among the rich masses of Elsie's hair. They found a good deal to talk about. They always did, for they were kindred spirits. Their chat was now grave, now gay, generally the latter, for Cad's music was inspiriting. But whatever the theme of their discourse, Herbert's eyes were constantly seeking the face of his companion. "How beautiful you are, Elsie," he exclaimed at length, in a tone of such earnest sincerity that it made her laugh. The words seemed to rush spontaneously from his lips. "You are always lovely, but tonight especially so." "It's the moonlight, Herbert. There's a sort of witchery about it that lends beauty to many an object which can boast none of itself." "Ah, but broad daylight never robs you of yours. You always wear it wherever you are, and however dressed. You look like a bride tonight. I wish you were, and that I were the groom." Elsie laughed again, this time more merrily than before. "Ah, what nonsense we are talking, we two children," she said.
Oh.
Then, starting to her feet as the clock struck 10.
Dagger throw you retard right there.
"There, it is my bedtime, and I must bid you good night, pleasant dreams, and a happy awaking." "Oh, don't go yet," he cried, but she was already gone, the skirt of her white dress just disappearing through the open hall door.
Hubert's like, "I wish we were married," and Elsie's like, "Bye, see you later."
Time to go to bed. Anyway, I just think, the scene setting is good, and like the dialogue is pretty okay for this time. It's pretty all right. It's pretty all right. So that section was, to me, I always remembered it as Herbert's down to fuck beneath the moonlight witchery, and there's like black metal screams like in the background.
Secretly pagan as fuck, that Hubert.
Yeah, can't you just hear like moonlight witchery? Anyway, and then I have one last. It was a lovely morning early in May. The air was vocal with the songs of birds and redolent with the breath of flowers, all bathed in dew. Delicate wreaths of snowy vapor rose slowly from the rippling surface of the river that threaded its way through the valley, and folded themselves about the richly wooded hillsides, behind which bright streaks of golden light were shooting upward, fair heralds of the coming of the King of Day. On the outskirts of the pretty village of Lansdale, and in the midst of a well-kept garden and lawn, stood a tasteful dwelling of Gothic architecture. Roses, honeysuckle, and Virginia creeper clambered over its walls, twined themselves about the pillars of its porticos and porches, or hung in graceful festoons from its many gables. The garden was gay with sweet spring flowers, the trees, the grass on the lawn, and the hedge that separated it from the road, all were liveried in that vivid green, so refreshing to the eye. Like an introduction to Aunt Wealthy's house. Yeah, just real good visuals and description.
That sense of wealth with like what is around and like how it's
and how well cared for it is and stuff. Yeah, so
yeah,
the quality of writing is pretty good. So no issues there. The dialogue can be overwrought sometimes, but that's just what talking was like. And I know I already talked about the whole like I always feel nervous about reading black characters written by white people. We already talked about that, so that remains. But I would give the moment to moment a 1 and the plot stuff a 1. I mean, the plot stuff, actually, no, I wouldn't give it a 1. I'd give it a 0 for the lost opportunity, but, yeah. All right. Terrible's presence. All right, so chaos levels. I will say I was getting spun every few chapters when some, like, insane rich person detail got dropped, but, like, I guess that is the reality that we live in. It was just like, taking a whole ass piano on vacation? Like, what? And then, like, you can just go on holiday whenever you want for months at a time? Just endless holidays. They're always going on holiday. Elsie reveals
if you don't actually have to do the work because the slaves are doing the work, turns out you can fuck off all you want.
Yeah, or indentured servants or whatever. Elsie reveals she has never once dressed herself in her 18 years upon this mortal plane.
Never. Ever?
Never. Not once.
Like,
nope.
Would she be in trouble if there was no one around to dress her?
Oh, yeah. Elsie would be dead as a fucking doornail if she was alone ever. She is never alone.
It's like cold in the house and everyone left for Europe and she's like, hello? I don't know how to put a dress on.
Yeah, just absolutely fucking helpless. So she has had her nursemaid Chloe with her since she was born. Chloe is like the one constant in her life. So even when she moved houses and stuff, like Chloe was sort of like a package deal for whatever reason. I don't really know how that worked. So yeah, she's never once dressed herself. That's the level of rich people we're dealing with here. Like, you are never by yourself.
Dude.
Yeah.
Damn.
Crazy.
I feel like even some rich people nowadays aren't getting to that level.
No. For please help, the amount of times I had to contact Chris. There once, when Herbert was introduced, proposed, and died within like 20 pages, I was like, Chris. Level of ableism in this book is terrifying.
Let me tell you. Not that I've ever proposed to a young girl and like immediately died after because I was rejected, but
yeah, it was just
relatable still.
Heart just broke in two. Was it? So for Terrible's presence, I'd give this like a 0, just because there were some things that were a little weird. But all right, should this exist? Would readers of this genre enjoy this? I mean, I feel like the available literature at this time, like, the pickings were probably slim. So I think unfortunately, if you're like a kid who can read in the 1870s and you wanted some like kid content, probably all you got.
Harry Potter back then.
yeah. So like,
Harry Boys ain't around for another like 80 years or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So like, I'm sure this was relatively well received at the time. Now I think it is a very different story. Yes, kids have many more options, and just the whole zeitgeist of America has changed pretty drastically since then. So, you know,
the YAs for young girls are quite different nowadays.
Oh yeah, a lot more dick sucking in hallways and stuff like that. So it's very different. Really turned a corner there. Do we feel as if the author's goal was met? Oh, absolutely. She very clear about her intent and seemed like she wrote to suit that intent. So, yep.
Yeah, I would agree there.
Does it add anything new, interesting, or novel? No. Fuck no, absolutely not. Did it take something from me? It wasn't too rough a read, and I kind of knew what I was getting into, so what should someone read instead of this? Said it before, I'll say it again. The Dear America or Dear Canada or Royal Diaries series, that whole property there. Definitely read any of that. If you're interested in Elsie Dinsmore,
like a better choice.
throw it away. Just get something else. Though I will say the whole like Dear America, Canada, Royal Diary stuff, there were some that were pretty unsavory and shitty because almost all of them were written by different people. There's like no author represented more than twice. So some authors were great. Like the woman who wrote The Diary of Pringle Rose that we read, that was awesome. And some of the books were not so great and like really weird and racist. So, maybe check out some other feedback from readers online. But if you or children in your life are looking for this sort of like historical day in the life of a girl fiction, like definitely head over to Dear America, Canada, Royal Diary series. Don't give them Elsie Dinsmore. If you can help it. I mean, I guess, yeah, I could not recommend, I just can't recommend this. I think it would be good for people to read as like, wow, this is the other side of things. Like, this is sort of, it's good to get the exposure to it.
Of like what was happening.
Good. Well, and it's also good to get exposure to other perspectives, right? Because I think it is important to see what, what people who are into this kind of thing are up to and what kind of worlds they're writing about. But yeah. Okay, can we fix it? So for me, I was sort of just getting into this, but it's really hard to take something from like a wildly different time and try to suggest edits to it because America is just very different 150 years later. Of course, obviously, I would love it if the characters were more developed and the black characters weren't caricatures, especially. I would also really prefer to not have the main character be a weirdly adult, Jesus-obsessed young girl with no sense of the world who kind of wants to marry her dad. Unless it was there to be torn down or rebuilt later to show her growth. But my understanding is that's not what was intended, and it's not what happens in the rest of the series. She's supposed to be like a model, to the reader. All of this, I'm just not into that. I'm just not into the like super conservative, weird, Christo-fascist, white supremacist lifestyle. Like, It's not for me. I think it would definitely be concerning if this is given to modern kids with that intention, and it's not provided as part of like a larger array of literature. In which case, that's totally fine. Like, if you're reading a bunch of diverse books and like a young reader can like read this and compare it to something else and use critical thinking, I actually think that's great because you want to give kids exposure to things. You don't want to like wall them off from everything because then they develop weird complexes and they end up on a subreddit, oh
no, the worst fate.
So to be clear, I would only be concerned if someone was exclusively giving their kids like Elsie Dinsmore and the Tuttle twins and nothing else and like no way to compare and contrast different viewpoints. Like, definitely don't do that. But like, if your kids are getting this and other stuff, that's fine. But lastly, like, I just kind of hate slice of life stuff. So I don't know. Even if all this was changed, I don't know if I would have really cared. Just because I don't think it's as skillful as the Dear America books. Like, I'm sorry, I'm hung up on Pringle Rose. I think that was just such a high point.
Once you popped, you couldn't stop.
That's true. Susan Campbell Bartoletti, was that her name? Yeah, great. She did a great job. Great author. Anyway, all
right, Paris, you got to score that rubric.
All right, I think I gave it a 1 for technical construction, a 0 for plot, 1 for moment to moment, 0 for true bliss presence. What is it? Do the math. Was that 3? Did I give it a 3?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, no, because you had 1 on technical, 1 on moment to moment, and then did you say 1 on should this exist?
Oh, no, that's a 0.
Okay, so that's a 2.
I give it a 2.
2 out of 5.
Still feels too high. Too high.
All right, well, the rubric has done its work.
I can't believe people are actually assigning this to children as like books to read.
Yeah, it's all this and Tuttle Twins and leadership courses.
God,
that's all it is, man.
And what is it? Like King Wizard
PragerU.
God.
All it is.
Oh, it sucks. Anyway, yeah, like I don't think this is great, but I'm also not. I don't believe in banning books or telling your kids they can't read stuff. I think they should read. I think you have to read things you disagree with, and if you don't, you lose the ability to pay attention and think critically and like have thoughts for yourself. So like, I wouldn't recommend this, but
I'd rather
again,
just ask God and Dad first. That seems easier.
if it's part of a healthy diet of different colored books, you know,
You have your green books and your black books and your.
As long as your book plate has different colors and sizes on it, you're all right.
Okay. Well, I guess it's time to thank the patrons. Thank you to our bad bookworms, Anya, Ben, Donnie, Emily, Jakub, Jared, Scott, and Will. Our exacting editors, Kieran, David, D, Emmy, Funny Robot with Antennas, Greg, Harry, Seven, Martin, Root Beer Cutie, and the Ugly One. Our loathsome librarians, Veronica, Yanka, Lucek, Patricia, Robin, and Julius. Our pesky publishers, Miles May, Austin, Beast with the Least, Of the Void, the taco-eating unicorn of the Hot Springs, and Patrick Jackson. Thank you so much for joining the Terrible Book family like you did. Thank you to our Ko-fi donors like Mark and Tracy, and our ever-faithful Kiwi Thing and Excavating Lizard, along with Martin F. Brenna and Matthew, who helped relieve us of terrible books. If you want some terrible books we've read for the show, you can buy them over on our Ko-fi page. Will anyone accept the challenge to become an archivist this year? What heinous, monstrous tome will you force us to read? Okay, Paris, I'm going to get locked in my room for the rest of my life with my $1 million allowance. You know, nowadays, I could totally spend that from one room. I could totally sit in one room and just, like, buy shit to be delivered to me constantly. But harder in Victorian times.
Yeah, harder in the 1870s. All right, well, this was the time. Thank you, Deborah, Unrepentant Sinner, for writing in. It's always fun to get emails from people or messages and get suggestions from folks. I know we can't always promise we are definitely going to read the thing you tell us about, but sometimes we get to it 6 months later or 7 years later or never, but it's cool for us to hear from people. So
yeah.
Just as a final reminder, if you could give us a review somewhere, that's helpful. Just send us a note if you like the show. All
right, Paris. I'll see you later.
All right. Bye, Chris.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Terrible Book Club. Terrible Book Club is an independent podcast produced by your hosts, Paris and Chris. Sound design and audio editing by Chris, with sound effects and music by Epidemic Sound and sometimes also Chris. Our theme song is Kiss by Yearn, which is, you guessed it, actually also Chris. You can find more of his soothing synthy sounds on Bandcamp at yearn.bandcamp.com. Do you want us to review a book of your choice on the show? Do you want access to some extra audio-visual weirdness? If so, become a patron at patreon.com/terriblebookclub. If you'd like to send us a one-time tip instead, you can do that at ko-fi.com/terriblebookclub. You can also support TBC for free by sharing the show on social media, following our accounts on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Goodreads, telling your friends about your favorite episode, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or anywhere else on the internet. To send us book recommendations or your adorable pet photos, send an email to terriblebookclub@gmail.com.
Right, just gotta take a swig of my Alexander. 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I like tell listeners
this format's great. Like when you're on the receiving end, you just kind of chill and like listen, just have a nice time.
Yeah, and I can drink my Jarman juice from my Jarman jug.
I want to also take an Alexander sip. Thank you, Adam, for Alexander juice.
Chris's brother bought us both Alexander the Warrior jar from Elden Ring shaped mugs, so now we're just both drinking out of giant Alexander Jarman mugs. Great.
Quite satisfying.
Holds a lot of liquid. Pretty good.
I like that he has his arms crossed in a way that's like, yes, sip from me.
Yes. I will protect the contents. Okay. All right.